Poor father shares his sandwich with a girl. Little did he know, she was a millionaire's daughter. Jack's heart raced as he watched the clock tick toward noon. He had carved out a rare moment during his lunch break, yet felt the weight of his responsibilities pressing down on him. He tore off a chunk of his humble sandwich, made with love and care, glancing over at Emma's favorite peanut butter and jelly tucked neatly in her lunchbox. The worries swam in his mind: how to keep the lights on, how to ensure Emma had a future filled with opportunity rather than scarcity. The unrelenting hum of uncertainty gnawed at him, and with each bite he questioned if he was doing enough. His two jobs, the mechanic by day and janitor by night, left Jack engulfed in exhaustion. But it wasn't just fatigue consuming him. It was the thought that soon he could lose everything. He approached the local park, taking deep breaths of the crisp autumn air. A sense of tranquility wrapped around him, though it was bitterly juxtaposed with his financial insecurity. Then he saw her, a girl Emma's age, alone on a bench, watching with longing eyes as the other children laughed over their lunches. Her unkempt hair, dirty clothing, and sad demeanor sparked something in him. He felt a twinge of empathy, a gentle pull at an invisible heartstring. The drive to help was instinctual, fueling a flicker of hope in his otherwise bleak day. Without hesitation, he walked over and offered half of his sandwich, feeling the sensation of warmth swell in his chest as he said, "Want to share?" As their eyes met, Jack noticed her surprise turn to gratitude. But before he could savor the moment, doubts crept back in. Was this a wise choice? Should he really be giving away what little he had? Flashes of resentment twisted inside him. Why did he always find himself in situations where giving felt like a luxury? But in that instant of connection, he brushed aside his anxieties. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Days turned into weeks as Jack built an unlikely friendship with Lily, the girl he had met. She became a window into another world, one filled with untouched privilege. Jack wrestled with his own growing envy. How could someone so young be so naive to the struggles of life when he lived so close to the edge? Yet, amid the lightness Lily brought, Jack felt the undercurrent of tension rising. It wasn't just the worry of the attic bills. It was the secrecy of it all. Then came the day that unraveled everything. He had been let go from his janitor job, an unjust act of a corporation that saw numbers over people, culminating in enormous helplessness that flooded him like ice water. He felt humiliated. The mountain of shame pressed upon him as he grappled with the reality of job hunting while desperately clinging to the hope for better days. The pain of inadequacy festered inside him. Any help felt like a concession of defeat. As Jack stewed in his own despair, he sensed that Lily, with her affluent lineage, might hold the key to lightening his load. But would he swallow his pride and accept assistance? Or would he shatter the fragile bond they had forged, a bond that seemed imbued with both hope and anguish? The stakes loomed high, their worlds beginning to collide in complicated disarray, and Jack was left at a fever pitch, wrestling with impending ruin while feeling the tether of friendship stretch to its limits. Would he allow compassion to guide him, or would stubbornness drive them apart as they navigated the fraught chasm between their lives? The shadows of the afternoon grew longer as Jack sat alone in his battered pickup truck, parked in a quiet corner of the school lot where he picked up Emma each day. He felt the weight of the world pressing down on him: disappointment, fear, and a gnawing sense of failure. The job loss had upended everything. He had assumed that his constant grind would ensure something stable for Emma, yet here he was, jobless, on the verge of breakdown, all while a flicker of friendship may yet lead him to the edge of infamy. Jack's thoughts wandered back to the last time he saw Lily. They had shared laughter in the park, but that day lingered heavy in his memory. The sudden shift from sharing sandwiches to now, him swallowing his pride and possibly asking for a favor, felt alien. He couldn't shake the sense that Lily would not understand. How could she? She had grown up with every comfort, while he fought for basic stability. But the truth seared through his thoughts. The job market was brutal, and desperation was swelling. As the school's bell rang, releasing a tide of children into the parking lot, Jack found himself staring at a small flyer hanging from the bulletin board by the entrance. It advertised a community college, highlighting evening classes on skilled trades, business management, and even personal finance. A seed of determination began to sprout. What if this was the chance Jack needed? What if he could learn something new, something that could elevate him from being a mechanic scraping by to a more stable life designed not just for survival, but for thriving? The thought filled him with a flicker of hope, a feeling he hadn't indulged in a long time. He took a breath, piecing together a mental plan. It would be hard, working by day and studying at night. And where would the money come from? Yet the prospect of picking up additional skills could mean the beginning of a new chapter, a potential escape from his current cycle of struggle. As he turned the truck back on, ready to leave the school grounds, his phone buzzed. It was a text from Lily. "Hey, I've been thinking about you. How's things? Want to meet up?" A swell of emotions hit him like a wave. How could he respond? The temptation to share his struggles was there, to show vulnerability, but also fear. The fear of being judged, of being seen as someone less than worthy. Yet she was reaching out. Perhaps this was a moment he had to seize, not just for him, but also for the budding friendship that still felt delicate. He typed back quickly. "Sure, I'd like that. Can we meet at the park?" The decision to meet filled him with nervous anticipation. Would he allow her to see the cracks forming in his armor? Could he risk the connection they had developed by revealing his grievances? Arriving at the park, Jack's thoughts darted between anxiety and resolve. What if he told her about his job loss? The truth was daunting, yet he felt the walls of pride encroaching. He needed help, but how much was he prepared to reveal? Suddenly, a car pulled up, and out stepped Lily, bright, unburdened, an embodiment of the world he wanted to navigate. In her eyes, he saw a glimmer of hope and the promise of understanding. But as they greeted each other, he sensed that his moment of truth was just around the corner. As they walked together, the park felt alive with the sound of laughter and the crunch of leaves underfoot. Jack wondered if he could face what came next. A confrontation with his own limitations loomed on the horizon. Perhaps it was finally time to redefine his notions of self-worth, friendship, and resilience. But as they walked deeper into the park, Jack knew that the moment of revelation was approaching. Would he shatter the facade he had built, or summon courage enough to invite her into his world? The intersection of their lives had arrived, and he stood precariously at the precipice. Jack's heart pumped a rapid rhythm as he and Lily strolled along the park path, her laughter mingling with the fading sunlight. The dichotomy of joy and fear created a turmoil within him. He could feel the weight of unspoken words pressing against his chest, yet he hesitated to break the delicate facade that had framed their interactions thus far. "Did you have a good day?" she asked, glancing at him with an inviting smile, unaware of the tempest brewing in his mind. "Yeah, actually," Jack replied cautiously, "just the same old stuff." The words came out bland, a calculated avoidance of the truth. The truth, which almost stung at the edges of his consciousness, felt too fragile to voice. As they walked, the sight of children playing, a carefree existence he once experienced, made Jack's heart ache. Each laugh acted as a reminder of the world where he felt trapped. He wanted to be that strong, steadfast father Emma deserved, not the one in a constant state of crisis. "Do you ever feel stuck?" he asked suddenly, the words spilling out before he could reconsider. Lily paused, searching his face. "Of course," she admitted, "but I also believe you can change your situation if you want to." The determination in her voice struck a chord. Her words ignited a spark of self-doubt. Could he really change? He felt like a rudderless ship adrift on an unpredictable sea. Encouraged by her openness, he took a breath. "I got laid off a few weeks ago," he blurted out, bracing for her reaction. The confession tasted bitter and liberating all at once. Her expression shifted, sadness pooling in her eyes. "I'm sorry to hear that, Jack." That sympathy unnerved him further. He wasn't seeking pity. He was searching for understanding, perhaps even acceptance. "It's just been hard, trying to figure out what's next." She nodded slowly, seemingly processing his struggle. "Have you thought about what you want to do?" There it was, the external prompt he needed. This was his moment, the opening to articulate his newfound determination. "I saw a flyer for evening classes at community college. They offer courses on business and trades," he began, his voice trembling with unsteady conviction. I know I need to do something. I'm scared of failing again." Lily regarded him with a soft intensity, and he could sense her energy shifting. "Well, what would it mean for you to succeed? What does that look like?" Tension coiled within him. He had never truly articulated his aspirations. "A stable job, providing a good life for Emma, building something for the future. I want to be more than just a mechanic." Those last words hung in the air, a pivotal revelation. It challenged the narrative he had long accepted about himself. In that moment, with Lily's encouraging gaze, he began to understand what was at stake. Not just financial independence, but the reclamation of self-worth. "Then that's a start," she encouraged gently. "Every small step counts." Her conviction lit a fire inside him, but doubt still fluttered in his mind. Could he really transform his life? The path ahead, fraught with challenges, required more than aspirations. It demanded relentless effort and facing adversity head-on. As they continued walking, Jack felt a subtle shift, a quiet determination building within him. He realized that this was not merely surviving, but rather redefining who he could be. He had to confront his fears, and perhaps tonight he could start forging a new path. "Lily, can I ask something?" His voice wavered. "Of course." "What if I struggle? What if it doesn't go how I plan?" "Then you adapt. You stay committed and learn from each step, even the missteps," she assured him, confidence radiating from her. For the first time in a long while, Jack felt the seed of resilience take root. As they approached the park exit, his mind buzzed with newfound clarity. But then a flicker of uncertainty emerged. Could he really maintain this drive? Would he falter when faced with the obstacles ahead? He stole a glance at Lily, who exuded that unrelenting positivity, and pondered whether that kind of strength could become his. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something profoundly transformative. But beneath that budding determination lay a question that lingered ominously. How far was he willing to go to remake his identity? Now committed to pursuing his education, he felt the walls closing in. His moment of truth had nudged closer, uncertainty trailing behind like a relentless shadow. As they left the park, Jack's inner tension gnawed at him, and the next step felt monumental. Would the courage he now felt translate into action? Or would he retreat from the burgeoning vision he had begun to construct? Tonight, he would sit with those thoughts, but he couldn't shake the feeling that change was imminent, a potential upheaval waiting just around the corner. The evening air held promises of both challenge and change as Jack walked home, the fading light casting elongated shadows on the pavement. Each step felt heavier than the last. A whirlwind of thoughts filled his head. What had seemed like an enlightening conversation with Lily now felt like pressure weighing down on him. The flicker of ambition she had ignited was blinding, and amid the glow, self-doubt crept in. Could he handle the strain of class assignments, projects, and the inevitable frustrations that came with learning something new? As he entered his small, cramped apartment, the familiar, stale odor enveloped him. The remnants of unwashed dishes in the sink and the cluttered space contrasted starkly with the aspirations he had begun to mold during their walk. Jack dropped his backpack on the floor and glanced at the pile of overdue bills on the kitchen counter. Each envelope held a stark reminder of his responsibilities. He paused, reality pressing against him like an immovable wall. How could he reconcile the fervor of change with the constraints of his circumstances? For years, he had defined success through the narrow lens of financial stability, a perspective shaped by his upbringing. It wasn't merely about personal growth. It was about Emma's future. Sitting at the worn table, Jack pulled out the flyer from his pocket. The smooth paper crinkled slightly under pressure. He read the course descriptions again, feeling a mix of excitement and trepidation stirring within him. Business and trades, what could that mean for him? An opportunity to pivot toward a better existence? But opportunity came at a cost. He would have to balance study with finding work, possibly taking on 2 jobs just to make ends meet. The thought buzzed like an annoying fly, disrupting his emerging focus. So many risks loomed ahead. What if he didn't excel? What if he failed to balance everything? Suddenly, a flood of memories surged forth, pivotal moments in which he felt bound by limitations. He recalled his own father, a mechanic who worked tirelessly yet remained trapped in the grind, never once taking a step toward ambition. Jack shivered at the thought of becoming the very image he had opposed. Would he be faced with the same fate if he failed to act? He began to consider the legacy he wished to build, not just for himself, but for Emma. Was he willing to break this chain of complacency? Forcing himself to imagine a different story, he breathed deeply, feeling the weight of these dreams settle into his bones. Compelled by newfound urgency, Jack reached for a pen and began drafting a plan. He scribbled potential courses, times, and a rough budget. Each word felt more empowering than the last. It was a declaration of intent, a blueprint for the future. Underneath his scribbles, he penned Emma's name in bold letters, a steadfast reminder that she deserved more than what he had to offer at this moment. As he sat there contemplating his next steps, the flicker of fear began to tether itself to a flicker of resolve. He had an education to pursue, ambitions to chase, and obstacles to conquer. But courage and commitment would be daily choices, not singular events. Burdened yet inspired, he reaffirmed his determination, sparking a hint of anticipation. This was not just about success. It was a chance to redefine both his identity and Emma's future. Each choice he now made would echo through their lives, shaping the legacy he longed to create. But as resolve settled in, doubt whispered persistently in the recesses of his mind. What if he stumbled? What would he say to Emma when faced with failure? With this question lingering uncomfortably, Jack knew he had to prepare for the unknown. The path to change was no longer a distant dream. It was real and just within reach. Tomorrow would be the day he made his intentions known. With that thought, he closed his eyes and felt the weight not as a burden, but as fuel, an igniter for everything he was ready to become. Yet, even as this determination solidified, an unsettling thought flashed through his mind. If he stepped onto this new path, who would truly support him? And what if, just on the horizon, stood a face from his past, intent on dismantling every shred of progress he would attempt? The dawn brought a sliver of hope filtering through the grimy window of Jack's apartment. As the first rays touched the clutter on the table, he felt the urgency of the day ahead crash against him like a wave. Determined, he swung his legs over the edge of the bed, standing to face a world that felt both daunting and exhilarating. He had made a decision, and today was the first step toward an unfamiliar future. The remnants of self-doubt lingered, but they were already losing their grip.
He envisioned the classroom, the lessons that awaited him, and the chance to reclaim his narrative from the chains of financial despair. Jack took a deep breath, absorbing the clarity of purpose radiating within. After a quick breakfast that consisted of a single piece of toast and lukewarm coffee, he picked up the course flyer again. There it was, the gateway to a new life. He couldn't shake the memory of his father's stagnant existence, locked into routine, but he refused to let that fate repeat itself. Today, he would break the cycle. Heading out, he carried his old backpack, now filled with potential instead of mere reminders of his past. Each step toward the school felt heavy, but this heaviness was no longer a burden, it was fuel, propelling him toward transformation. The streets bustled with life, people immersed in their routines, ambition gleaming in their eyes. Jack often felt like a spectator, but not today. Today, he was the protagonist of his own story. Upon reaching the school, he hesitated at the entrance. What lay beyond those doors frightened him. Would he blend in with the others, who likely had a country club membership next to their wealthy parents waiting to support them? A familiarity with privilege that felt foreign. Swallowing hard, he pressed forward, propelled by an inner mantra, "You deserve this." The first class was information-heavy, and as the instructor spoke about business principles and the necessity of risk, Jack's mind raced. He couldn't help but draw parallels to his life. Choosing to pursue education was a risk, and understanding the mechanics of business was essential for building a future for Emma. Yet, questions spiraled inside him like a tumultuous storm. What made him think he could succeed where others might fall? He found himself feeling out of place, the imposter syndrome creeping back in. As the class progressed, he tried harder to silence those thoughts, instead focusing on notes, desperately trying to capture every idea as if it were a lifeline. During lunch, he sat separate from the other students, absorbing the rich conversations around him. Some were discussing summer internships, others compared their relatives' businesses. His insecurities flared again as envy coursed through him. Instead of succumbing, Jack took a moment to gather his thoughts. He would use this discomfort to fuel his determination. He just had to remind himself why he was really there. As he navigated the sea of students after lunch, he spotted a flyer for a networking event. The thoughts of mingling with peers and industry professionals circled in his mind. Could he muster the confidence? Would any of them feel compelled to even talk to someone like him? Gripped by a mix of fear and excitement, he took a deep breath. This was about creating connections, stretching beyond his comfort zone. Jack was ready.
To challenge himself, he had to be. If he wanted to build a better life for himself and Emma, he needed allies, mentors to help guide him through this treacherous new terrain. As he made a pact to attend the event, a shadow crossed his mind, a reminder of the entity from his past that could disrupt all his efforts. Just then, a familiar face crossed his path, sending his heartbeat into a sharp sprint. There, standing in the hallway, was Kyle, a childhood friend turned adversary, a source of ridicule during their teens. Jack froze momentarily, the weight of their shared history pressing on him. Would this encounter provoke old doubts, reignite insecurities? He steadied himself, reminding himself he had everything to lose, but far more to gain. The time had come. Would he confront his past, or let it dictate the future? Only one thing was clear. He had to choose. Jack's heart raced as he stood frozen in the hallway, Kyle's laughter echoing in his mind like a haunting refrain. Everything inside him urged to flee, to retreat into the shadows, but he knew that wasn't his path anymore. He inhaled deeply, tangling his fingers around the straps of his backpack, drawing strength from the very thought of Emma. As Kyle approached, Jack's resolve amplified. Their eyes met, and in that brief moment, Jack's memories surged. Years of taunts, the sting of rejection, and the feeling of inadequacy. Yet now, standing on the precipice of change, he refused to be defined by that boy anymore. The layers of his past were peeling away, revealing a core that was burgeoning with potential. "Jack, didn't expect to see you here," Kyle said, a hint of mockery threading his tone.
Jack's stomach churned, but he forced himself to maintain eye contact, steeling himself against the weight of Kyle's smirk. "Yeah, I decided to start fresh," Jack replied, trying to infuse his voice with a confidence that he felt spatters of beneath the surface. "What about you?" "Oh, just the same old hustle. Business seems to be in my blood," Kyle smirked, the words dripping with unearned superiority. Jack felt a rush of indignation. Blood didn't dictate success. Determination did. "I guess we'll see who has the better hustle in a few years, huh?" To his surprise, Kyle hesitated, a flicker of uncertainty briefly clouding his features before the grin snapped back into place. "Well, good luck with that, Jack." As Kyle turned to walk away, Jack felt a weight lift off his shoulders. He tangled with emotions, mixed relief and simmering determination. That encounter had been a confrontation, but it also illuminated a small truth. He was no longer afraid of Kyle or what he represented. He felt a spark ignited. He could carve his own path away from the echoes of his past. Later, in the safety of his apartment, Jack scrutinized the flyer for the networking event. The words swirled in his mind, a cacophony of promise and anxiety. Words like opportunity and connections danced tauntingly as the memory of Kyle lingered, a reminder that each step forward was a testament to his evolution. The clock ticked ominously. After a moment, he turned his computer on, his fingers hovering over the mouse, grappling with the prospect of reaching out to strangers in tailoring a future for Emma's sake. It was heavier than a college application and far more consequential. He understood life was all about navigating relationships, professional and personal, but he had a gap of experience that others seemed to cover with ease. Utilizing the insights from his earlier classes came easy theoretically, yet the practical application weighed heavily on Jack's mind. What if he approached the event with authenticity? Could he voice his truth amid a sea of polished smiles and effortless confidence? Jack plotted a strategy during the evening, framing potential opening lines, visualizing interactions that could blossom into partnerships. The fragile barrier of his doubt crackled, replaced by a growing resolve. He would not stumble through the event awkwardly. He would embrace it as an opportunity to reinforce his identity as a capable student and father. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across his living room, Jack steeled himself for tomorrow. Instead of retreating, he'd stand boldly in the face of uncertainty. With a sly smile, he wrote down a mantra. Every connection begins with vulnerability. That night, as he closed his notebook, Jack felt an optimistic pulse beneath his skin, a confidence he hadn't known before. The echo of Kyle's derision felt distant, almost trivial to the burgeoning passion igniting within him. Yet, as he prepared for sleep, one more thought pierced the veil of tranquility. What if the networking event did not yield the success he hoped? What if he faltered under the weight of expectation? Jack's mind raced with possibilities, weaving doubts back into the fabric of his optimism. The truth loomed before him. The road would be challenging, filled with stones that he could trip over or use to build something strong. Tomorrow awaited, bringing with it a crossroads, a pivotal test of his resolve. He could either forge a new path or buckle under the pressure. The choice was looming, but he knew the stakes were higher than they had ever been. He drifted into restless sleep, the specter of ambition leading him into uncharted territory with mounting urgency, and the echo of a single question surfaced. Who would he become when faced with the pressure of transformation? As dawn broke, Jack awoke to the sound of his phone vibrating against the wooden table. The morning light streamed through the window, illuminating the remnants of his thoughts about the networking event. He stretched, feeling a mix of trepidation and courage swirling within him. Today was a pivotal moment. It was a chance to prove to himself, no, to Emma, that he was more than just a father trying to make ends meet. He dressed deliberately, opting for a plain, well-fitted button-up shirt instead of his usual t-shirts. Each button he fastened felt like armor shielding him from self-doubt. He rehearsed his lines silently, ignoring the shrill voice of insecurity whispering its familiar refrain. After breakfast, he sat in front of the mirror, taking a moment to focus on his reflection. "Today, you're going to be someone," he whispered, as if the act of speaking it into existence might solidify the determination brewing inside. A small smile cracked his pre-work anxiety, but it was quickly followed by a twinge of doubt. What if he stumbled over his words? What if he fluffed his first introduction? Despite his wavering thoughts, he made his way to the venue, each step resonating with the rhythm of purpose. The outside world bustled around him, people rushing to their destinations, their laughter and chatter mixing into a symphony of life. Each face he passed held its own story, its own struggle. It reminded him that he wasn't alone in facing uncertainty. The city thrived on countless others navigating their paths as well. Upon entering the venue, the atmosphere was electric. People thronged, engaged in animated conversations, their confidence apparent in the quick transitions from small talk to deeper discussions. Jack felt swallowed by it all. But instead of retreating, he stood taller, adopting an approachable demeanor that belied the storm in his chest. Spotting a small group of attendees surrounding an older gentleman, Jack seized the opportunity. He approached, heart pounding, but propelled by strong internal affirmations. "Hi, I'm Jack," he said, extending a hand. "David," the gentleman replied, shaking Jack's hand firmly. "What brings you here today?" Jack felt the heat of embarrassment rise, not having a rehearsed line ready. Yet words spilled out, driven by the desire for authenticity. "I want to connect with people. I want to learn how to build something meaningful." The sincerity in Jack's voice drew the group's attention. David smiled knowingly, as if recognizing the young man's quiet determination. Meaningful connections start with a willingness to share your journey. The conversation flowed naturally, their topics ranging from industry insights to personal stories riddled with struggle. Jack found himself laughing with them, his initial anxiety debilitating under the weight of shared experiences. He discovered a hidden talent for engaging others, a potential he had never recognized in himself. As the event progressed, he approached various speakers and professionals. With each interaction, he let down the protective walls that had kept him in shadows for so long. He asked questions, listened intently, and as others opened up about their failures, he found strength in his own vulnerability. Then, standing in a quieter corner, Jack spotted a woman engrossed in a discussion with a few others. Her laughter mixed easily with the conversation, and an inexplicable curiosity drew him closer. Courage pushing him forward, he approached. "Hi, I'm Jack. I couldn't help but overhear. It sounds like an exciting project you're working on." She turned, her eyes crinkling with amusement. "It has its challenges. I'm deep into the tech industry, starting a new venture." They continued to converse, her insights igniting a spark within Jack, igniting dreams of overlapping paths and ventures. Then she casually mentioned her family's background, which struck Jack like a lightning bolt. A daughter of a millionaire, he thought, as her words washed over him. The realization painted a vivid contrast against his own fledgling aspirations. Was she just another connection, another professional facade in a glamorous world, or could she offer potential mentorship, a chance to elevate his ambitions? Yet he felt a sudden swell of discomfort, a fear of being seen merely as a charity case. As their conversation deepened, Jack wrestled, aware he stood on the brink of something transformative. Would he risk genuine connection, or would the shadows of his doubts pull him back? With the networking experience still unfolding around him, Jack was faced with a choice. Step deeper into the light, embracing his newfound resolve, or retreat back to his familiar fears. The stakes were rising, and as he weighed his options, the question hung palpably in the air. What if this connection truly changed everything? Jack's heart raced as he stood before the woman, struggling to navigate the growing weight of his fears. The warmth of her laughter lingered in his ears, contrasting sharply with the icy grip of self-doubt that threatened to wrap around him once more.
She exemplified everything he aspired to be: composed, driven, and effortlessly charismatic. "Tell me more about your venture," he said, attempting to divert attention from his escalating insecurities. She leaned in, her enthusiasm infectious. "We're focusing on tech solutions that enhance accessibility, bridging gaps for those who struggle with everyday tasks. It's all about impact." The glow in her eyes was unmistakable, a glow that resonated deep within him. Was this what passion felt like? He knew he had the capacity for it. He just hadn't fully tapped into it yet. Jack watched her speak, painting a vivid picture of her goals. Part of him was swept away in her passion, while another part tugged him back, warning him against getting too lost in a conversation that could only highlight his shortcomings. He had to resist the instinct to compare. Instead, he asked, "What challenges have you faced along the way?" Her laughter faded slightly, replaced by a more serious tone. "Many, honestly, from funding issues to skepticism about our mission. But every setback taught me something invaluable. You learn how important resilience is in this industry." Resilience. The word echoed in Jack's mind. He understood struggle all too well. Every day was a battle in its own right. As her words sank in, he mentally cataloged his own experiences: the late nights with Emma, the juggling act of full-time parenting, and his dead-end job. Nothing could compare to the relentless grind she described, yet each story was its own jewel, a testament to perseverance. Their conversation danced back and forth like a game of catch, each exchange building a bridge from her world to his. The nagging self-consciousness faded as Jack took a leap of faith, sharing snippets of his journey. "I've struggled with feeling invisible in my own life, like I'm just existing instead of really living," he confessed, surprising even himself with the honesty. She nodded, her expression shifting to one of understanding. "I get that, but you're taking steps, Jack. Just coming here shows you're ready to break free from feeling that way." Jack felt a swell of gratitude. Her encouragement hung in the air, buoying him above the waves of doubt crashing in. Could he lean on her support? If she could see the merit in his struggle, perhaps he was worth investing in after all. As they continued to discuss, he began to see her not as the daughter of a millionaire, but as someone who genuinely believed in the power of small beginnings. He questioned why he had initially placed her on a pedestal. The revelation came smoothly, like clear water rolling down a hill. His value stemmed not from wealth or connections, but from his experiences and aspirations. The moment felt almost electric, and he sensed a shift in his own belief system. "What if I really could build something significant?" he pondered quietly. Just then, their conversation was interrupted by a fellow attendee, a tall man with a booming voice. "Kate, you ready for that panel discussion?" Jack froze, the moment shattered. He realized he hadn't even caught her last name. What if this connection was fleeting? "Just one moment," she smiled at him, then turned to the newcomer. Jack felt a pang of urgency rise within. "Wait," he interjected. "Before you go, can I get your contact information? I'd love to follow up and share my ideas with you." His words poured out in a rush, each one laced with an unexpected assertiveness. Her brow furrowed momentarily before she smiled warmly. "Of course, Jack, I'd love that." She quickly scribbled her details on a card and handed it to him before shifting back to her other companions. As Jack moved away, he glanced at the card, his heart racing with exhilaration. For the first time, he recognized a shift within himself, an acceptance of both his struggles and a commitment to embrace the potential he had just uncovered. But as he stood there, cocktail in hand, the looming reality of maintaining this momentum struck him hard. Could he cultivate this newfound belief into something tangible? The question lingered in the air, a challenge yet to be faced. What awaited him was far from clear, but Jack felt ready, uncertain excitement dancing in his veins. The weight of his next decision loomed menacingly. Would he summon the courage to pursue this new journey, or would he falter at the first sign of resistance?
Jack stood awkwardly in the crowded room, the hum of voices swirling around him like a tempest of uncertainty. He glanced at the card again, Kate's name scrawled elegantly across it, a tangible reminder of his encounter. The brief connection had ignited something within him, a flickering flame of ambition, but that flame was precarious. How would he fan it into a roaring fire? He found a quiet corner, retreating from the noise and the remnants of his self-doubt. Jack's hands shook slightly as he considered his next steps. He had let the moment with Kate spark a thrill of hope, yet fear clawed at the edges of his mind. These feelings were both invigorating and terrifying. The risk of pursuing a dream felt monumental. "What's next?" he muttered to himself, feeling slightly foolish in the solitude, but needing the question to reverberate in the hollow of his mind. How would he even begin to transform the idea of building something significant into reality? His full-time job demanded so much of his energy, leaving little room to explore uncharted territories of innovation. He remembered his late-night brainstorms, scribbled notes filling the margins of his mind, ideas that lived in the shadows of his routine. Those moments of creation were often overshadowed by the mundane tasks of his life, work reports, laundry piles, school meetings. Yet every word he shared with Kate played on a loop, encouraging him to rethink his situation. Perhaps this was less about starting from scratch and more about pivoting the direction of his journey. What next to actualize those ideas? The thought of networking felt daunting, yet almost essential. The connection with Kate presented a unique opportunity to tap into resources and knowledge he had never considered before. As he leaned against the wall, Jack wrestled with a mounting urge to reach out to her again, to seek her guidance on how to cultivate his ideas further. He dug into his pocket and pulled out his phone. With hesitant fingers, he navigated to her contact details and hovered over her number. A voice in his head began to chastise him, warning that he would be intruding or appearing desperate. But another part, emboldened by their earlier conversation, dared him to take a chance. And then it hit him. This moment was not about desperation, but intention. If he truly wanted to break free from the envelope of insignificance he had wrapped himself in, then embracing discomfort would be instrumental in that process. Jack sent a short message to Kate, succinct and genuine. "Hi Kate, this is Jack. I wanted to thank you for our conversation earlier. I was inspired, and I would love to connect to discuss ideas I've been working on. If you're open to it, could we schedule a time to chat?" After hitting send, a rush of adrenaline coursed through him. What would she think? Would she respond positively or dismissively? The uncertainty was unnerving, yet it was also liberating. He had taken a step, however small, toward a path he had previously avoided. As he lingered in his thoughts, entertaining visions of potential futures, Jack contemplated the very nature of ambition. Would he be able to overcome the barriers in his mind and put forth the vision of accessibility that his heart yearned to develop? The ache of anticipation grew heavy as he watched the throngs of attendees engage energetically. In that moment, he recognized that this wasn't just about his dreams. It was a pursuit of identity, a chance to align his actions with his values. He had uncovered a sliver of purpose, and he needed to nurture it. Suddenly, his phone buzzed in his pocket, jolting him from his reverie. A message illuminated the screen, and Jack didn't hesitate to open it. It was from Kate. "Hi, Jack. I'd love to connect and hear what you've been working on. How about Thursday afternoon?" The world around him faded to a blur as he read those words. Hope swelled within him, filling the cracks of despair he had carried for so long. Yet the tensions of preparation tightened around his chest. What if he couldn't articulate his ideas as well as he hoped? What if she realized he was just an ordinary guy, struggling for significance? Jack took a deep breath, pacing himself. This was an opportunity, not just a test. With a response brewing in his mind, he couldn't help but wonder if he was truly ready for this leap. Could he transform the ideas that flickered like fireflies in his mind into a solid plan? With trembling hands, he crafted his reply, knowing that the journey ahead would challenge every assumption he had made about himself and his abilities. The moment of truth awaited, and he was finally ready to step into the unknown. The curve of uncertainty loomed large. Was this the beginning of transformation, or would he falter once again? The afternoon sun bathed Jack's apartment in a gentle warmth, yet he felt a chill tightening around him. The moment had arrived. He would meet Kate, the woman who had sparked a new ambition within him. As he prepared, layers of self-doubt weighed heavily, threatening to overpower the burgeoning confidence he had slowly nurtured since their encounter. He remembered the conversations they had. Her enthusiasm was infectious. Every word she shared seemed to resonate with the potential he once thought impossible. Today, he wouldn't just meet her as another struggling individual. He would present himself as someone ready to pivot his life. He adjusted his collar, practicing his pitch in the mirror, tapping into the readiness he had once only dreamt of. Walking towards the coffee shop, he felt the familiar pit in his stomach grow, but this time it ignited a flame of determination within. What if he stumbled during their discussion, exposing his vulnerabilities? That thought laced itself through his mind, but he pushed it aside. He resolved to let his authenticity shine. If anyone could appreciate his journey, it was someone like Kate. Upon entering the cafe, Jack's gaze swept across the room, landing on the familiar silhouette of Kate. She looked radiant, a poised young professional effortlessly sipping her coffee. As their eyes met, a smile blossomed across her face, and in that instant, Jack felt a flicker of reassurance. "Jack, I'm so glad you made it," she greeted warmly, standing to give him a light hug. The genuine friendliness relaxed him. They settled into their seats, and conversation flowed like a gentle river, winding through the details of their lives, ambitions, and dreams. As they exchanged thoughts, he was surprised at how easily he spoke about his aspirations, his vision of creating accessibility solutions. The words tumbled out, enthusiasm bridging the slightly awkward pauses with confidence. Jack was finally opening up about the dreams that had long been silenced by uncertainty. "I think accessibility should be a priority in our tech solutions. It's about making the world equitable," he said, his passion illuminating the dull cafe space. Kate leaned in, her eyes sparkling with interest. "That sounds incredible. What steps have you thought about taking? Have you looked into potential partnerships or funding options?" Jack hesitated, trapping his thoughts in a web of fear. "Well, that's where I struggle. I've always been so focused on just getting by. I guess I never allowed myself to explore those possibilities." The confession hung heavily between them, a reminder of his former insecurities. "Oh, Jack, it's never too late, you know," she replied earnestly. "The first step is to connect with people who believe in your vision. We can brainstorm together. I'm here to help." Her support wrapped around him like a warm blanket, easing the chill of doubt that had followed him for so long. Slowly, he lifted his gaze to meet hers, exploring the strength of her conviction. "Really? You'd help me?" "Absolutely," she assured him. "In fact, I know a few investors who are passionate about the cause. I can introduce you. Let's set up a meeting and see where this takes you." Jack's heart swelled with gratitude. In that moment, it became clear that the barriers he had erected were constructed through fear and insecurity. By sharing his vision, he was reclaiming his narrative, stepping away from the realm of mere existence toward the empowerment of innovation. As they continued to discuss potential avenues, Jack found himself caught in a whirlwind of ideas, the room around him transforming into a canvas of possibilities. Each passing minute solidified his resolve to shift his identity from a man ensnared by his circumstances to one who envisioned a brighter future for Emma and for himself. After their meeting ended, Jack left the cafe with Kate's number and an invigorating sense of purpose. He didn't just walk away with connections. He had forged a deliberate pathway toward professional redemption and personal fulfillment. Back home, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the skies in hues of gold, he sat at his kitchen table, the very same one he had clutched in moments of despair. Tonight, it felt different. Tonight, the air dripped with possibility.
Jack picked up the course flyer he had once regarded with uncertainty and carefully penned contact information from Kate on the back. The words, "Every connection begins with vulnerability," echoed fiercely in his mind, guiding him forward. His journey was just beginning, and while he would undoubtedly face challenges, he felt empowered, renewed, and hungry for growth. In the stillness of the night, he reflected on the weight he had shed, fear, inadequacy, and darkened perspectives, embracing the burgeoning strength blossoming from within. He, Jack Matthews, was more than a struggling mechanic. He was a father willing to fight, grow, and innovate. Jack's transformation stood as a testament to one essential truth. When obstacles arise, true growth flourishes in the fertile soil of courage and resilience. As he drifted off to sleep, a smile tugged at the corners of his lips, an ebb of contentment washing over him like waves of the sea. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but he would not face them as a fearful man. He would conquer them as a visionary, ready to reclaim his narrative and build a legacy of strength. You need to subscribe now to our channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. It makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. We're curious to hear from you. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion.